Very good day to all of you. I am Rohan Mathur from the Hacktivist University, and on behalf of my team, I welcome all of you to today's event. Before we call upon the speaker for the day, let me brief you about us. Hacktivist University is a platform where aspirants meet industry experts. Our vision is to connect aspirants with industry professionals to help aspirants understand the intricacies of professional industry. We conduct various seminars and webinars across various IT related topics like software testing, DevOps, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, cybersecurity, and many more domains. We offer not only the technical guidance, but we also offer soft skills training to help aspirants present themselves better. Also, we offer free learning resources like videos, PDFs, and quizzes on a regular basis across various social media platforms. Before we move ahead, we would like to thank our partners, the activists, SIM Intelligence, and your investigator, as today's event could not have been possible without their support. Also, as a lot of participants queried about the certificate for attending this event, please note that the certificate will be provided to all the registrants after the session. You can expect the certificate to be delivered in your inbox within 3 to 5 business days. Our team will also be sharing the form link. Please submit it to receive the certificate. Before I hand over the microphone to our speaker, let me give you a brief introduction about their professional journey, and they will also be elaborating their professional journey in a few minutes. Shruti Rupa, currently working as a security research lead at Quickly Technologies, brings more than 6 years of experience across various domains of IT security, including blockchain security and application security. She actively contributes to security communities, research publications, and has been an active speaker at various prestigious conferences like OWASP Virtual AppSec, BSide Singapore, Pokemon, Bluepod, and has been featured in Google Developer Blogs, Women in Security magazine, and various other cybersecurity newsletters. Now let's hear more about her journey and how to start and grow as a professional malware analyst. Over to you, Shruti Rupa.
Thank you so much, Rohan. I hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, you are.
Oh, great. So, thank you so much for having me and having such a wonderful introduction about me. So, just quick brief that I work at Quick Heal as a security research lead. I'm having around 7 years of experience. I'm going to complete 7 years of experience in few months. I also have a YouTube channel named as Cryptoware, where I discuss about how to analyze malicious samples in the simplest way possible. I have been speaker trainer at different conferences and workshops and some of the local meetups as well. And I love, learning about new things. I love learning about different domains of cybersecurity as well. So here I am a learner and an explorer. So moving ahead, I would like to say that the session is quite interactive. I would like to have more questions coming from you all so that we can have a cool interaction, and we can understand also like what are your questions and thought process over here. So my cybersecurity journey had been very, there has been a lot of transition. Like I started with blockchain research, then I moved to VAPT on web applications. I did some sort of Android application testing also, and then I moved to malware research. So basically, while I was in my master's, I got inclined towards a subject called cryptography, and I wanted to do something with that subject. Now, we did not have a lot to do in our country related to cryptography. For that, I had to be, in completely into the research area. So what I had identified was blockchain was the closest thing to it. And so I got a chance to do some sort of blockchain research. While doing my blockchain research, I was in Payato at that time, and my colleagues were doing this VAPT and penetration testing, etc. And I also tried to learn those things from them. So while learning all those things, I realized that this is also something that I am slightly interested in. So I moved to VAPT, and that time I was completely a fresher, so I did not know what to do. I went for CEH, a certification, and it is certified ethical hacking. And from there, I got a chance to start my cyber security journey, to be more precise, from that startup which is Secure Layer 7. And then I continued doing VAPT till I moved my domain to malware research. Now, why malware analysis? So the very basic thing is I was doing VAPT on web applications and mobile applications, which I was enjoying a lot. I was, going through different bug bounty platforms. I was trying to I was trying to explore all those options. But the thing was that I was not enjoying that part a lot. For example, if I have to find a specific vulnerability, I was enjoying finding that vulnerability because it gives you some hacker kind of feel, right? But I was still not enjoying. Somewhere I saw some of my colleagues were doing for overflow reverse engineering, so I started discussing with them, like, what are you doing? And that was the point when I understood that there is something beyond web VAPT. And mind you, I was not even having 1 year of experience at that point of time, so I was constantly asking different people to understand what they are doing, what are different domains. I started reading different articles. I started going through different blogs, going through different videos to understand what are the different domains. So while exploring different domains, since at that point of time I was having just 1 to 2 years of experience. So I was in Qualys, I was again into web application only. So I was simply exploring different options, and I was trying to replicate whatever I was reading, whether it is related to cloud, whether it was related to IoT, if hardware. I was reading all those different blogs. And while going through them, I realized that malware analysis is one thing which is actually giving me some kind of interest. So there was a complete attack chain that I realized while learning about malware analysis. Like, I had to think about how an attackers actually think, like starting from the very initial step to the last stage. What is an attacker thinking over here? So the thrill of understanding how attackers actually think actually made me get into, involved in this malware analysis domain. And apart from that, this is a constantly evolving battlefield. We know how with advancement in technology, everything is growing so much. Then we have so many campaigns related to that, and every day we come across different campaigns which have some innovative attack techniques. So previously they used to have some very simple injection techniques, but now the techniques have evolved so much that those injection techniques are not even used by any malware. They have come under, those basic traditional malware attacks. The advanced ones are so difficult, and they are trending. I mean, they are happening, but they are not happening in the wild, but they are still happening. And we know that they will keep on evolving with each passing day. Again, as I had mentioned that I was quite excited with the fact that people around me were doing some reverse engineering, some buffer overflow kind of things. So I started, learning, or to be honest, I started imitating whatever they were doing. So if they were following any blog or they were doing whatever they are trying to do, I would install those tools. I would try to just replicate whatever they are doing to understand what is happening. And trust me, it was really very difficult because I was not able to understand what I was also doing. What is the use of the tool? It was so difficult for me to understand the difference between reverse engineering and debugging at that point of time. I had a very basic question, like, why do we use these two different terms? So I was so naive at that point of time, but still I was very interested in that. So meanwhile, if you have any questions, so please keep asking. I would love to answer. So this malware analysis journey, it started with the fact that I mostly want to learn about how attackers are actually, doing their attacks, how the threat vectors have changed so much, what are they actually trying to do, why they target certain domains. So there had to be a shifting of gears. Like, I had to make my mind that I have to transition from blockchain to malware, because in blockchain I was doing core research. There was some part of security in that also, but mostly I was learning about blockchain, how blockchain is actually prevalent, why is it used, for what different applications you can use blockchain. And at that time I was also looking at the security perspective of it. So somewhere I did some smart contracts audits also, but the projects were very few at that point of time. I did not do much. I think I did one or two of the projects related to smart contract vulnerabilities. And then in VAPT, in web application, I was actually finding different vulnerabilities. So I had to shift my mindset from finding something, finding some vulnerabilities, to looking for some other kind of malicious activities into a code. So I was not into code analysis initially, although white box testing was there, but I was not into code analysis completely. But at this point of time, and if you have slightly idea about malware analysis, before getting into the dynamic part, in static we have to actually go through the entire code to understand if the code is present with us, of course. So we have to go through the entire code to understand what is the code doing, and majority of the time it is not at all possible to identify what the code is doing, because they are very much obfuscated, or they have sometimes they're encrypted also, sometimes they're packed also, and it's very difficult to understand what the code is doing. Even from that obfuscated piece of code, you have to identify what the malware would be doing. So there had to be a shift in mindset. Apart from that, as I said, I did not understand how reverse engineering worked. I did not even know the difference between reverse engineering and debugging at that point of time. So I had to get into that also. So I started again replicating whatever was mentioned in the blogs wherever anyone had done any sort of reverse engineering or debugging. So whatever tools that they were using, I would install those tools, and I would simply follow their steps, just to see if just to see if anything, I can understand about it. And trust me, it took a lot of time for me to understand, but finally after a few years I could actually understand what's happening. I understood what is the difference between reverse engineering and debugging. It did take a while, but it's not impossible. It takes a time, but you will have to be, constantly into it. So what did I do? Now, I was into web applications. So I wanted to get into malware analysis. So I had to showcase that I have some knowledge in malware analysis. Now, I had to be very much clear with the fact that although by that point of time I had 3 to 4 years of experience in cybersecurity, but I had no experience in malware domain. So one thing that if I get a chance in any organization, they will not consider me as a senior or as an intermediate professional. They're going to consider me as a fresher specific to the malware domain. So I had to make myself completely ready. Like I had to make peace with myself that yes, this is going to happen. I have to again get started with my journey. But if I really want to get into that, I'll have to take this step. Secondly, I started writing about malware analysis, like how you can do some malware analysis on your own of simple files, like the files that we use on a day-to-day basis. Even I'll be showing you a small demo of the same as well. So I started writing about those files, analysis, this basic static and dynamic analysis. Then I created my YouTube channel, which I mentioned already, which is Cryptoware. So whatever I was learning, so I was learning at one point, and parallelly I was also creating videos because I also wanted to understand, like if I know something, I should be able to explain it to the people. So if I'm able to explain it to the audience, then it would mean, at least for me, that I have some knowledge into that specific subject. So that is another reason why I created that YouTube channel. And after doing that, I started being regular on that so that I can have some videos. So before transitioning into that domain which I want, I can showcase that in my resume or to people that yes, I know some sort of malware analysis. I just need some chance. I need some industrial experience. Apart from that, I started reverse engineering some open source malware samples. For example, what do I mean by open source malware samples? In the GitHub links, there are different GitHub links or different malware samples which are possible, which have already been reversed, whose analysis is already present. They are easily available, and they don't have a lot of features for you to find it difficult to analyze in the start of your career. So I started with the analysis of those samples, and trust me, I still use those samples in my videos because I know there are a lot of people who really want to get into malware analysis. And I've seen there are lots of videos, also videos and resources which are available, but they are wonderful. Those videos are very much wonderful, but they were not good enough for me when I had started my journey because I was not able to understand. It would be different for different people because such things are quite subjective. But I understood that there could be some few people like me who may not be able to understand from those videos as well. Maybe they need some more knowledge about the basics of malware analysis. So I started talking about the analysis of malware in a way that even if my dad or if a 6-year-old child comes and goes through my video, should be able to at least understand. I'm not expecting them to do the complete analysis, but they should at least understand what I'm talking about. Like, what is my aim over there? So that's what I started doing. So I would pick up very simplest samples. I would just simply analyze. I'll just dissect it in a simplest way just to show that yes, it is possible. We don't have to go very advanced to perform some basic analysis. So these are certain things that I started doing, and I started talking about them also. Like, I had to showcase also that I know malware analysis. Speak and write more. You have to write. You'll have to write some blogs, or you will have to speak somewhere. You have to present some sessions wherever you get a chance to speak about it, so that people can know about you, that yes, you are into this specific domain, you know about this. And again, communities are a very good way how you can actually connect with like-minded people. So if you want to get into malware research, you should join those communities who are very much specific to those kinds of topics like malware. So if you see that initially, while I was into this VAPT domain, I was mostly linked with those communities where people used to do a lot of bug bounty. So now, if I am connected with those communities, they will not help me with the research. So I have to switch from those kind of communities to find those communities and like-minded people who actually are interested into malware analysis. And that will actually help me into enhancing my knowledge also. So if I'm doing a specific kind of analysis or research in a specific way, for example, the other person would be trying some other approach. So if I talk with them, if I discuss with them, I'm going to learn their approach, and they are also going to learn mine, and that is going to improve and upgrade our knowledge. So these are some of the ways how I started, like, to transition my domain into that, because the organizations will not believe or trust in you if you directly tell them that yes, I know this specific domain, I want to get a chance. They will anyway be interviewing you. So there has to be something that you can tell them about, or get selected in the first round at least, where you can convince the HR that yes, I know the specific things. I am okay with considering myself as a fresher. That was something that I had mentioned to all the HRs, that I'm okay with considering myself as a fresher. But luckily, I got chance in Quick Heal, and I was not considered as a fresher in malware, but I was considered as a senior in overall years of experience, and that actually helped me a lot again. So sometimes if you can showcase your knowledge, some organizations do give you a chance. Okay. Are there any questions? I did not see or get a chance to see any questions yet. Okay, I will suggest some malware analysis community. Sure, please allow me some time. I will definitely suggest. Meanwhile, you can find some in Telegrams also. Okay, is learning assembly really a prerequisite? Learning assembly is going to help you, to be honest. This is really going to help you. But trust me, I did not learn assembly explicitly. But what I did was I would write a piece of code, I would convert it into assembly and try to connect the dots. So I had read few books as well. Like one was the practical malware analysis book. I would mention it in the comments also. And there's another book which is specific to reverse engineering. So I went back to old school ways and I read those books completely, and they have explained about everything related to assembly, related to reverse engineering. They're quite specific to Windows, but if you're getting started with it, I don't mind starting with Windows. Okay, because it's just the way how assembly is shown, assembly language is, for example, like in Windows, I see it in an Intel way, but in Linux, you will see it in a different way. So there's some repos for samples. Yes, I'll suggest those repositories also. Like the zoo is one repository that I have mentioned before also. There are other repositories also which is related to, I think, VX Underground. You can actually search for them and you can find them also. VX Underground, you will have to, search for their links. So VX Underground have papers also where they have done some analysis. So you can actually go through them. So they're pretty good. And I'll share some community names as well. Cyber kill chain is related to malware. See, the entire cyber security thing is not correlated. So sometimes if I talk about the entire kill chain, they may or may not have a malware. So if I talk about different steps now, so there are different things involved. So in those cases, there are vulnerabilities also involved over there. Okay, so malware is also related over there, but I would say that is more of a complete cyber security aspect, not just one thing over there. Okay, some community related links, daily case use cases, I'll share it later on. Meanwhile, if you have any more questions, you can ask. I'll go ahead with the slides. So moving ahead, some of the challenges that I faced were, of course, I needed some reverse engineering skills, and the right question was that do we need to learn assembly? Yes, we need to know assembly, but trust me, if you understand the logic, you may not require it to learn explicitly. Knowing it to the core would really help you a lot. But if you're good with the logic, you may not find it very difficult to understand the disassembled code. That is my personal experience. I did not learn assembly explicitly, but I did learn about why certain things look like this, like what are some specific operators that I learn about. And trust me, when you analyze a lot of or reverse engineering a lot of code, you'll also get used to it. So those two books that I suggested, if you go through those books, your assembly language that you require for reverse engineering will actually clear a lot of your basics. Understanding OS internals, events, processes to look for is another thing which is very important. Again, you need to get started with it. You need to get your hands dirty. You cannot just simply read about it and expect you to remember or know each and everything. You will have to go through it, because it's not possible to, really remember like which events I should be looking for, which processes are important, which processes are malicious, which OS internals. Like if you're interested into Windows, then you will have to learn about Windows OS internals. If you are interested into Linux, then go for the Linux ones. That is completely up to you. Windows, Linux, Mac, Android, whichever malware analysis you want to do, you can do. If you are trying to learn, specific to a platform, then you have to know that platform's OS internals. Okay, the rest of the things remain similar, not same, they are similar. In Windows, if you use ABC tool for the analysis, for Linux you'll be using a different kind of tools, but you'll be looking at the similar things. So in Windows, if I'm looking for these kinds of DLLs, in Linux I'll be looking for different kind of source files. So that is the thing that you have to look for. That is the difference. Things are different, approach is different. For example, for static analysis, I'll analyze the sample, I'll read if the code is visible, I'll go through the code, what is the code doing. If I have to execute the sample, I would need the platform, whether it is specific to Windows, whether it is specific to Linux. Now, some samples are not specific, are platform dependent. For example, PDF or some text files, they're not very much specific to platform. So they have their tools for analyzing those samples can be run anywhere. So that would not be an issue. Now, overcoming the steep learning curve of assembly debugging and unpacking was another aspect, because initially when I started with malware analysis, I was analyzing very much straightforward samples. Even in my videos, you will see that the samples that I have chosen are still straightforward because I have not moved to the advanced or even to the intermediate part. I'm just revolving around the basics only, and the basics itself involve a lot of things. So even in basics you will have to do some sort of debugging, some sort of unpacking. At least you will have to know what are they. I mentioned about obfuscation. So how obfuscation is related to debugging or obfuscation is related to packing. Are those two terms same? What would emulator mean? Why is assembly required here? Is assembly required always for unpacking? So these are some of the things which took a while for me to understand. It really takes some time to grasp these things, and that is not a problem. Because these are the challenges that you're supposed to face, and if you're facing these challenges, it means that you are going towards the right path. Again, I'll look for some more questions. There are some malware roadmap already exists. I'll share those roadmaps. There are lots of things that I need to share. So if I'm not able to share over here, I'll share with Rohan. So that I think that would be a good idea. Rohan, please let me know. He will be able to share with you all. For CEH certification, you can study from anywhere EC Council, but you will have to understand that why that certification will be useful for you. I did that because I had no clue how to get into cybersecurity at that point of time, and I did not ask anyone specifically about it. So back then I felt it was important, but after a few years of experience, I feel that certifications are not way too important. They are important if you actually focus on the learning part. Some organizations do look for certifications, but if you can showcase your skills, your knowledge, then they will not matter too much. You can get study materials like the books that I suggested there, ebooks are already present. So I'll share the links for them also. I'll mention the name of the books as well. Okay. So Linux Android based malware analysis use case, I'll give you some basic gist, but I'm not into Linux or Android malware analysis, but I have seen some samples. For example, I'll give you a very basic example. With Android, what happens is you must have heard of those kind of games related to Amazon or different websites that you click on this link and you will win some prizes. Some kind of games are already present, which is sometimes related to Amazon or different websites, e-commerce websites. So you think of it as a genuine website, but it is not a genuine one. So you once click on any of the link and you do not even identify, but you end up downloading an adware. Adware is nothing, but it will just keep popping different ads. You might have experienced something like that. that, like if you infected your Android device, you will see a lot of things popping up suddenly, or you may see some different applications getting installed into your Android and you had no idea that it got installed. So these are some of the very basic examples of Android malware. I did not do any malware analysis specific to Android or Linux yet. I'll be doing. Okay. For Linux, there are different ransomwares also, which are specific to Linux nowadays, because they want, their goal is very different. Mostly they are targeting some kind of servers. With Windows, what is the thing is that majority of the users are Windows. So we know the target is Windows. Most of the times for these threats, but we use a lot of servers which are dependent on Linux. So specific to Linux also, we have observed a lot of ransomware cases also. Some more question. Okay, so Karan, this is not a course. So basically, I explained about my transition and what were the challenges that I had faced in malware. So if you keep asking me more questions, I might answer related to that. So if you are into binary exploitation and you want to get started with malware development, Zishan, you can choose your choice of language. I would suggest C, C++ is the best. You know why? Because it is like, if you want to, now you have to understand like which specific kind of malware which you want to develop. Like, are you more focused on Windows or Linux? For Android, you will have to choose another language. C# is another which is used a lot. So you can choose any language of your choice. There are languages, there are Rust and Go based languages also, because of a lot of, what do I say? Like, because of better garbage collection and better features as compared to C, C++. But if you are writing a malware using Go or Rust, they could be slightly slower, but I don't think they'll run good enough. They actually run good enough. I think some Rust-based malware would be Blackbust. I'll have to check. I guess it is that. Best platform for beginner bug bounty. I'm not a bug bounty person, so you may check for HackerOne. I think I do not have much idea. I did not do bug bounty. I'll share the book's name. I'll definitely share that. So the books that I have suggested, they will also help you with mastering OS internals, but they are specific to Windows. Visual Basic Script, yes, there are malware which are specific to Visual Basic Script also, but I have seen them as loaders. I have seen them as initial stage malware. What do I mean by initial stage malware? The final malware, for example, ransomware, which needs to be executed into your system, should be brought into your system and should be executed into your system in some way. You as a user are not going to execute that malware. So in those cases, we have different loaders. So they are also malware. So they are mostly written in PowerShell or Visual Basic. So there are different languages that you can use. So yeah, you can use Visual Basic also. So to learn cybersecurity basics for people who are for commerce background, your background does not matter. I did my maths honors, so I did not have computer science background. You will have to keep learning. It will take some time for you, but you will have to keep learning. There are different options. You can take help from different people. As I mentioned, that if you can join some groups or some communities, there are people who really help. So even if you have a group of people who know nothing, then you all can decide that which specific topic each one of you is going to read and then teach that amongst yourselves. And that is how you are going to learn more. Okay, how did I get hands-on with platform like Linux? So I set up Linux environment. I have Linux. So if I have to execute a sample or analyze a malware in Linux, I would use a Linux platform. So Linux is open source, and also there are Windows VM also available. So you can set up. You will need VirtualBox for that. Important skills for cybersecurity would be networking, would be OS internals, If you are more specific to pen testing VAPT, I used to use Kali Linux or Parrot OS a lot. But I don't think that you have to be very much specific to OS. You can choose whichever OS you are more comfortable in for performing, for for being in cyber security. Some light on WinDBG and OllyDBG dynamic analysis and static analysis. I can show you the tool. I'll have to open my VM, but I don't know if I can actually like show an entire analysis because the agenda of the session is not very much specific to that. But I can give you an idea on what WinDBG tool, OllyDBG tool, so they do. So basically, they will help you with the debugging as DBG term suggests. So they are for debuggers. So you can perform some sort of debugging. So mostly they are for PE files, portable executable. To be more precise, I think I'm not going to be more precise. To be more generic, they're Windows specific executables, those applications which we double click on them and they get executed. So for those files, we use WinDBG, OllyDBG. WinDBG has another feature that you can actually do kernel level debugging also. For example, if there are rootkits, so you can actually do analysis, but for that you will need two different VMs, because if you do kernel level debugging, your system will, your VM will get stuck. Okay. Beyond this, I cannot verbally give you an idea about how the tools work. Okay. So there are step into step overs, different ways how you perform the debugging. Okay. So what the bar is set for an intern as a malware analyst in the industry. So they are not expected much. The interns are expected to keep learning and should be able to do some basic malware analysis. They should be keen enough to learn about networking. Networking is another aspect in cybersecurity that you should really be good at. It will help you in any domain within cybersecurity, be it VAPT, be it cloud, be it malware, forensics, whichever it is. Networking should be the base. Your networking should be really good. Okay. So these are certain expectations, but if you are an intern in an organization, the organization is supposed to give you trainings, and they expect you to be able to do the analysis at least at the basic level. They do not expect you to be doing a lot of things. Now I'm talking from a very generic perspective. Okay, for different domains or different requirements, the description or the expectations could be different, but at a generic level, they are not expected a lot. But they are expected to be learning. Their knowledge should keep on upgrading. So after 3 months or after 6 months, if the organization wants to see like where do you stand, you should be able to analyze the malware, which you were not able to on the first day of your job. Okay, so Akshat Dubey is asking, digital forensic versus cybersecurity is different versus. I don't understand the question. Can you please elaborate? Malware analysis is really for someone trying to break into cybersecurity. It totally depends upon you. So malware analysis is something which I figured out as my domain, which I. This is the things that actually excites you as well, then you can get into malware analysis. That does not mean that as someone who wants to get into cyber security should always start with malware. If you are getting started with cyber security, you have the entire time actually to explore different domains. Try to learn about different domains, explore different domains, and figure out which is the one that actually excites you the most. So is becoming. Yes, Quick Heal provides internships in malware analysis. So Karan is asking, so let's So if you want to completely understand Win debugger kernel level exploitation, I don't think this is the platform where I can actually explain it to you, because the agenda, as I mentioned, is different, but we can talk about it later on. I'm really sorry. You can connect me over LinkedIn if you want to know about it. We can discuss about it. How important is cybersecurity in the field of IT auditing? I think IT auditing comes under cybersecurity, so it is important, right? I do not have much idea about audits, so I cannot explain a lot about it, but it is pretty important because there is a timeline within which an organization, whether the organization is specific to cyber security or not, has to go through some policy specific to this auditing. So it is really very important. Okay, are all different fields. So yes, digital forensic is a part of cybersecurity. Okay, so they are the field, the cybersecurity itself is a field, right? So it has some subdomains. For example, if I say I'm into cybersecurity, I'm not very much specific to which domain I am in. Like I can tell that to someone who does not understand about specific domain of cybersecurity. So but if someone who understands cybersecurity, if I tell that I am into cloud security or I'm into malware analysis, they will understand to which specific part. So that digital forensic also comes under this part. Okay, is CompTIA good for entry level? I cannot mention if that security plus is good for entry level. It could be. I have not done personally, so I don't think I am a very good person to mention about that. But personally, just go for certification only if you feel that you can learn about everything and you can go through it. Just because everyone is doing, you should not be doing the certification. Can we learn? Yes, you can learn. If you're talking about malware analysis, I think anything you can learn on your own. I learned on my own. Yeah, of course, I followed some videos also. I followed some books. You will need some resources, right? So you will need some resources, but you have to be very much consistent towards it because it is going to take a lot of time. You do not necessarily need a mentor. Mentor is there to guide you. So you can actually speak with someone who can guide you. Okay, otherwise you do not need someone like a tutor to teach you malware analysis. You will have to study it and explore everything on your own. What does a day in malware analysis look like? So it totally depends. There are some aspects where there is a client facing role. So the role that I follow is mostly analyzing the malware, which I'll be showing in some time. So where I'll not pick up. So there are two scenarios that I'll talk about. One is where I am provided some malware samples from a certain team that we have found this malware which is infecting someone's system, someone's devices. So I would analyze those malware samples, and if I find them malicious, I would add a detection to them, I'll block them, I'll try to do all those sorts of things. That is one thing that I've been given some malware samples. On the other hand, I might go through different articles, different blogs. I will learn about the recent malware samples in the trend, and then I'll analyze them. If there is something new and interesting, I'll write a blog about it or talk about it. Or if not, I'll write a Yara rule or detection, whatever is required, I'll be taking an action on them. So there are two aspects. Now, if here what has happened that I have gotten in the first scenario, the samples from some other team. That other team which has given me those samples, that team actually speaks with the customers or speaks with certain people who have been infected. Okay, so they also do some sort of analysis. They do not perform complete analysis, but they do some kind of forensics from their end. So client facing is possible and is not possible. It totally depends on which specific aspect you are getting into. So how do you combine malware development with black hat hacking? Well, you figure it out yourself. So I am not sure what you really want to know. But from red teaming perspective, if you are into red teaming, you will have to write your own malware so that you can see, you can bypass some security checks. And at that point of time, you can see how your malware is actually able to bypass the scenario. So that is the maximum I can tell you about. I'll show you one example, very basic example. There are different tools. So I'll take some of the questions and then I'll be back to my slides. Okay. So do you need to master coding and malware analysis? No. If you are good with logic, you can do anything. Just don't be a coder. Be someone who can program, like be a programmer. So if tomorrow you are needed to write a program in Rust, you should be able to do that using documentation. If you need to use, if you need to write something in C, you should be able to do that. So don't be very much specific to a language, and you have to good with the logic. I personally am not a coder or a programmer. I mean, I do write programs. I mean, I write some tools. I would do some sort of programming, but that is not my code job. Okay, but if you ask me to write a code for a specific thing, I would be able to do that. Okay, I'll be able to go through the documentation and I'll be able to do that. And we have Google now. People, as somebody mentioned about ChatGPT, people use ChatGPT as well. So you don't need to know coding, but you should be good with the logic. If you can understand the logic, you can write a program, you can analyze a program. Okay, where can we set up a lab in our laptop for dynamic analysis? I will show you. You will need to have some virtual environment, VMware, VirtualBox. There are others also. I personally use VirtualBox. I cannot tell you anything about SOAR because I am not related to that. So I cannot mention about ebooks or courses related to that. So if you need internship or something, please connect with me over LinkedIn. I'll see if I can check with my organization. So languages are important in cybersecurity field. See, again, you should be able to logically identify, like, for example, if I give you an example about a complete attack chain, the first initial stage, if an attack happens, they'll be using a PowerShell. So you should be able to understand how PowerShell scripts are run. Okay. The next step could be a VB script. Then you should be able to understand how VB scripts are run. The third stage could be for example, it is a normal executable file. You should be able to go through or read through that executable file only if it is, visible. It is not tagged or obfuscated. So you should, as I mentioned a bit before, you should be good with the logic. You have different documentations available to understand which specific function does what, and you will be able to identify what the entire code is doing. Languages are important, but more important is that you should be able to dissect the program. Be it in PowerShell, be it in suppose C, be it in Python. You have documentations readily available, all the functions and the details are readily available. You should know how to read them. You should be good with the logic. That is the major thing that is required. How ChatGPT has helped the defensive and offensive aspect of malware. It has helped. So ChatGPT actually helps, but you cannot rely on ChatGPT completely. Yes, I do use ChatGPT. I use Google search. I use ChatGPT because you will have to, but you cannot be completely relying on those specific things. In Google, I'll look for the documentations, the authentic documentations or the authentic sources. In ChatGPT, I'll ask for the authentic sources if you're giving me some details. So I will not blindly rely on them, but I will ask because it makes my work easy. So in Google, instead of looking for Python specific document, I can directly ask ChatGPT that I'm looking for this specific function. I want a documentation related to that. Can you provide me that or link to that? So it is going to ease my work. That is the reason why I'm using. Okay. I'll share my LinkedIn profile. No worries. I'm not here to give review and overview of anyone's video. I already mentioned that whichever uh, whichever videos or articles that you read or you follow, they are very much subjective. So if I liked any of the video, for example, OA Labs, I loved their videos, but initially I could not understand what they were talking about. So that is very much specific and subjective to me. It may not be to you people. I can only give you an idea about what was my approach. So you can follow a similar approach and you can find your own. Okay, so I'm not here to review anyone's videos. So going back with the slides, we'll talk about the bigger picture, like what else is there related to, beyond malware analysis. Like not just malware research or analyzing a malicious sample is what I'm talking about. No, there's a lot. For example, threat intelligence, connecting indicators to real world examples. So here we are actually gathering different intel, different information related to different threat actors, the kind of malware they are using, the kind of APT groups or campaigns that they are following. So that is another domain which actually link you with malware analysis. So if you know malware research or malware analysis, threat intelligence, getting into threat intelligence, or if you know threat intelligence and you're learning malware analysis, both are going to complement each other. Similarly, OSINT and dark web research is also going to do the same. Here you are doing some sort of investigation campaigns, investigation of different threat actors, campaigns, ransomware groups, or any other malware groups. So these are all interlinked. Okay, if you are able to do one kind of thing, it won't be difficult for you to jump into other, but it's not very easy also. Okay, it's not like if I'm into malware research I can get into OSINT directly. No, even at that point of time you will have to showcase like what do you know about OSINT or what do you know about dark web. Okay, so the transition as compared to from VAPT to malware is slightly more difficult as compared to transition from malware to OSINT or malware to threat intel, because they are more connected. So you can learn them parallelly along with analyzing malware, and you never know. You maybe had started with threat intel and you ended up learning malware analysis. So sometimes we don't even realize that we are into OSINT. Okay, and while learning about these things specific to how they're mentioned as subjects, you understand that okay, this is something that I've already done, or this is something that I'm already aware of. Okay, network forensics, basically let's not make it just network forensics. The entire digital forensics is also something which is related to that. Okay, but here we use some other kinds of tool here, some other sort of investigation that we are doing. So they are all related to threat actors. They're all related to malicious samples, malicious softwares that we are talking about. These are the three main things that, actually can link you with malware. Okay, any more question? From incident response to malware analyst, yes, you can. People have done that. It is possible. If you're talking about SOC analyst, yes, you can do that. But you will have to showcase your skills that you know. But here you already know about different threats and the kind of activities, alerts that generate. So from here, you can actually understand about malware analysis as well. Okay, so for understanding on fileless execution and Win32, can you please let me know the question over LinkedIn, because here the agenda is very different. Code technical questions, if you have any, please connect with me over the LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help, okay, because I don't think this is a platform. Here I'm just talking about the different aspects of getting into malware analysis. So I won't get way too technical over here. So if you're talking about some projects related to cybersecurity that you can show to the organization, so you can pick up any existing campaign whose analysis have already been done. but you can actually go through their complete research and try to replicate them on your own. So if they're mentioning about any threat actors, learn about the threat actors from Virus Total, from other platforms, whichever they are available, different threat intelligence platforms. If there are any malicious samples, try to analyze those samples. You can showcase them as a very simple projects. Another thing that since Yara rules are related, so you can also showcase how you have written some Yara rules to identify. And there are platforms also where you can write your own Yara rules and you can showcase that. You have GitHub, you can write some tools to track these kinds of campaigns. These could be some of the very interesting projects that you can showcase. But if you're doing something very much new, then showcasing them to an organization will not be a very good idea. That would be a complete your own research. But if you're using some existing research, you can definitely showcase that. Some of the lessons that I had learned in my transition was it takes a lot of patience and perseverance. So, to be more precise, that initially when I got started with reverse engineering, first 3 to 4 years, I was just staring at the debugger and the disassembled code. So I was not understanding what is happening. As I told you before, that I was simply replicating whatever the articles would say. So I was doing that also. So I had started solving some crack me challenges and I was just following those write-ups. But to be honest, I was only staring at those codes and I was not understanding. But after going through few of the resources that I mentioned, then again staring into the code, I constantly kept on doing this for few years and then gradually I started understanding. I started understanding the assembly. I started understanding why certain operators are used this way. What is the meaning of this operator? If this code is written in assembly, why is it looking like this? So it took a lot of time. To be honest, 4 years of constant staring into the code actually made me understand reverse engineering a bit. So once I started understanding that, I again went through the books and the resources that I have again. So I had to keep going through this. Then I was able to understand what is happening. Okay, so it takes a lot of patience. You have to be very consistent with the work, with the efforts that you have to put. It's not an overnight thing, even it's not a 1 month thing. If you already have assemblies, if you already know assemblies, then it is not going to take too much time. But if you don't know assembly, like I did not know assembly, okay, initially, so it really took a while for me. Again, you need to look beyond simply analyzing malware. So what happens whenever we are analyzing malware, we look for certain steps. Okay, these were the functions used. This is the malicious part that we observed, and hence this is a malware. No, we have to look for some patterns too. What do I mean by some patterns? If this is a malware, this has been run by someone who could be the threat actor. If you know about the threat actor, then you can also understand how does that threat actor function. Is there anything specific that threat actor follow? Some malware families or not even some malware families, what happens that when someone is analyzing a kind of malware, they identified certain points, okay? Then once they identified they started with the analysis of some another malware, they found some similarities between both the malware samples, and from there they could conclude that possibly both the malware, although they belong to different families, could be executed or could have run by one single threat actor, or maybe they are running these malware as a service. So you have to follow some patterns also while analyzing, but that is a later part. But while analyzing malware, malicious samples, you will actually kind of see these patterns again. Now, find your tools is another thing. Not all tools need to be worked upon. For example, if I'm comfortable with Ghidra, you do not have to follow Ghidra only. You can do IDA. You can go for Ollie Debugger. You can go for some other tool. It is not necessary that the tool that I am using, you should also be using those tools. Be flexible. The way you have to find your domain, you have to find your tool, which tool you're more comfortable with. It's not necessary. If you can work with, a specific tool, for example, if I talk about Sublime Text, a lot of people will make fun of you that the person still uses Sublime Text. I sometimes use older version of Notepad. It does not matter. See, now you have to identify what kind of purposes it solves. If I'm using Sublime Text, for example, then I'm following certain things. Like if I have to deobfuscate a sample, a script, for example, a PowerShell script, then I would go for Sublime Text because it provides me some feature to execute over there, which makes me deobfuscate the sample quickly as compared to using Notepad. But if I just want to see what is written, I would simply use Notepad. So it does not matter. People will make fun of you. It does not matter. If you are not using a black background, it does not matter. Even with the white screen, you can still do your analysis and you can do it fine. You don't have to follow what others are following. Just because I'm using a specific ABC tool, it does not mean that you have to use the same tool. If you're getting started with it, you can start with the tool that I am using, or if somebody else is using in that case. But learn about other tools also, like if the other tool is more comfortable. For example, I started with Ghidra, but I found that IDA is much more easier for me to use. But somewhere I still go back to Ghidra, but because at that point of time, since I started with that tool, I found it much better than this. So nothing is better. There is no comparison. You have to figure out that different tools and their functionalities serve different purposes. You have to understand which purpose are you trying to solve. So you have to find your own tool. Just because someone is using a specific tool, it does not mean you have to use the same tool. Learning Yara rules really help. So you will have to learn. There are existing open source Yara rules for different kinds of samples and different kind of malware families that you should go through and see them and write your own Yara rules. This is going to help you with getting into malware analysis in an organization, because majority of the organization are looking for people who can write detections. And majority of the organizations also look for people who know Yara rules. So Yara rules will help. So whenever you are analyzing a malware sample, you should see how you can write a Yara rule on your own. You can take help, always take help. There is nothing wrong with that. But whatever you're doing, make sure that you're learning and understanding that. Just don't go blindly. Then again, exploring different articles or videos really help. So as I had mentioned that I would replicate whatever was mentioned in the article. So just keep doing that. If you're completely new, you can actually do that. And that is really going to help. You don't have to start with the analysis, on your own at the very first time. Just follow what the person is doing. Now, sometimes what happens that the way the tool or maybe the sample executed or showed the result into that article or the video may not be showing the similar result into your system. So in that cases, you can again look for some other article. Meanwhile, you can look for what could be the issue. You can connect with the person that you are facing such kind of issue. You can discuss with people in the community, or you can ask your senior. You can ask people that why is it happening. Okay, so there are different ways to figure out. And if you see nothing is helping, go for another sample, go for other articles. There are plenty of articles, plenty of samples, and plenty of videos available which you can actually follow. Again, you have to find your channel, you have to find your videos which actually relate with you, which you are able to understand. Again, these things are very subjective. The thing that worked for me does not mean will work for you, but you will have to figure your own tool or your own thing out. I can mention about the tools, or you can actually check out my channel where I have actually mentioned about different tools that I have used for analyzing the samples. Okay, so there are plenty of tools that are available. Mentioning all of them would be slightly difficult, but you can go through them. I have used Wireshark for network analysis. I use Ghidra, IDA. I have used Cutter also. WinDBG also I have used. So the different tools that I have used for different purposes. Okay. Are there any more questions? No more questions? No problem. So you can contact me. Okay, I'll share all the links. And meanwhile, I'll showcase a very small demo also. Compression list of tools. As in, what do you want me to give you the tools? I use open source tools. All my tools are readily available. So I've mentioned all the links from where you can actually connect with me. The last one is my YouTube channel where I have actually mentioned about the tools also, analyzing different samples also. You can, if you want to connect with me or if you have some specific questions, you can reach out to me over LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Okay. So we have a technical question. Hydra tools. I am more into malware analysis. I'm not using Hydra. So I'm not looking for any dictionary kind of attacks. So the Excel macro uses Win32 API calls to run shell code directly in memory without dropping any files. So what is the question? It may use lolbin. It totally depends. Nowadays, malware always use lolbins. Again, we are getting way too technical. I don't want to get too technical. If you have any questions specific to these things, please ask me over LinkedIn. Does malware analysis become a repetitive task after some analysis? Depends. If you have been analyzing same kind of script all the time, it becomes very repetitive. But if you are exploring different kinds of file types, then it does not become that specific, that monotonous. Another thing, what you can actually do is, I personally do, is if I have been given a script to analyze, I would try to figure out which specific campaign this script belongs to. What does that script do? What is the aim of that script? Even if it is downloading something, for example, why is it doing that? And what is it downloading? I will go and see what it downloads. I'll try to analyze that also. So that makes it interesting. You will have to also figure out how to keep making it interesting yourself. So there are different aspects. So I mentioned about dark web, OSINT, forensics. So you can integrate all these things on your own also, even if the organization is not asking you to do. Okay, sometimes the organization asks, sometimes it doesn't. But if you want to learn and if you want to make it less monotonous, you can actually do that. Hydra is good. It is for dictionary attack as far as I know. Top 5 tools is anything that you are more interested in. If you are good with. Tools and domains and videos and articles are very much subjective. I don't lose interest over time, to be honest, but I keep learning. So if I'm into malware analysis and I see that I have learned or I am quite good with these specific things, then I would go to some other things that I'm trying to learn. So I would always figure out what I want to do next. Okay, and this actually connects the dots. So if I am into OSINT, for example, I'm interested in OSINT, so I'll connect it with the malware research also, like how I am into OSINT, why am I connecting these dots? Or if I want to get into threat intel, how am I able to? You will have to read also different articles or speak with people how they are doing it. Sometimes you, while doing the research on your own, also can figure it out. How would you perceive a malware which is highly obfuscated and packed? I will try to de-obfuscate it. I'll try to unpack it. I'll see what kind of obfuscation it has used, how it has been unpacked. If it has used some open source tools to to pack or obfuscate, I'll use those open source tools to deobfuscate or unpack. Otherwise, I'll use debugger, or I'll have to see what other steps I can do. How much memory forensics do you use in malware analysis? I don't use. I have not used volatility. If I don't know I'm pronouncing it right, but I have not used. I've seen people using, I have not used it. I guess I have used it, but I'm not a regular user of it. I don't know what to do with Kali Linux that you have mentioned. Okay. So the analysis that I would like to show is a very simple one. Okay, this is not very complicated. Let me know once the screen is visible. So I've used a very simple tool. I've used a very simple file, which is a PDF file. I have not chosen anything very different, but we will just see like what could be the first few steps into identifying what is why is it malicious? Why am I calling it malicious? Is the screen visible to everyone? Cool. Okay. So the file that I am having is this one. So I often follow the static approach all the time instead of the dynamic approach. But for now, I think I'll follow the dynamic approach first. Just before that, I need to just see some checks. Yes. Okay, cool. So this is the PDF file and I'll just open it. Okay. I'm executing it directly just to showcase that this is a normal PDF file. So we see that there is nothing else, no other content is present over here. I have not used any other tool, okay? Just to show you that this is a PDF file and we can receive such kind of PDF files through phishing. Sometimes we download somewhere, sometimes we are setting up some kind of tool or installing some kind of tools and you have used some unauthenticated source and as a result some PDF got downloaded and you were not aware of it, and just like me how I opened it right now, you also ended up opening the PDF. I have chosen PDF because it can be opened in Windows, Linux, Android, Mac, anywhere. Okay, this is platform independent and I'm not going to showcase a lot of things. Just I'm going to show you how very simplest things can help you identify whether it is malicious or not. Now I have already opened the PDF file. Now let's understand what could possibly be doing. Before that, we will see if I have chosen the correct file type. So I've used file command so that Linux or the operating system that I'm using is Remnux. I mostly follow Remnux. So I've identified that the file type is PDF document. So we are confirmed that this is PDF and we are not dependent on or believing in the extension for now. Another thing is pretty common approach that I follow is using strings. Why? Because I want to look what all strings are present within the document. If there are anything interesting, let's see if we can see anything of that sort. The PDF document, let me make it more easy for you. The PDF document did not look like it had a lot of contents, right? When we opened, we just saw one line which was mentioned, but we did not see a lot of things. But right now, when we ran the strings command, we did see a lot of things mentioned over here. Another thing that PDF follows a format, okay? Every file has a format that it follows. So they have their magic header. Based on that, we identify whether it is which file type it is. So from here actually you can identify that this is a PDF file. I'm not going to get into the structure of the PDF file. I'm just telling you that yes, there is a structure that you can follow, that a PDF file follows. So here you can see that different things are mentioned about pages, outlines. We know that PDF files have these things. PDF files follow objects. So everything that is mentioned over here is an object, to keep it as simple as possible. Here we can see some embedded files are mentioned. Could be something which is embedded over here. We did see a large piece of something, things which are present. Please keep yourself mute if you do not have anything to say. So this is the thing, I think, which we saw when we opened the PDF file. This was the one line, and this is the stream, and this is the length. So what we can understand, that a PDF file, if anything is present over here, its length is mentioned and some streams are mentioned. So if there is anything else present here, we can actually see them in a similar way. Like there has to be something related to the length of the content should be there, and maybe stream should be mentioned. So let's keep on going. So we see a lot of things. Again, stream is mentioned, some length is mentioned. Here we saw the length was around 146 something. Yeah. But here, if we see, the length is quite big. And we can see stream. So there are a lot of things that it says according to, just I ran the string command. I did not run anything very much specific to PDF tool as well. Okay. So if we keep scrolling down, there are lots of things, a lot of contents which we did not see, which may mean that there is something embedded over here, maybe. But when we opened the PDF file, it did not have a lot of things. Okay, let's just go through it quickly. I'll just go here. Yes. So I wanted to get to the end of this. So this is the big piece of something that we observed. Is it a piece of code? Since embedded is mentioned, this could mean that there is some kind of embedded code or embedded file. Anything it could mean. Okay. So we did not see anything embedded when we opened the document. Really, if you want me to open the document again, we did not observe anything embedded over here. So this ends. There is nothing mentioned over here. So I've executed the sample twice, by the way. So now, if I want to quickly just go through, so we have understood about what this, like PDF has a specific structure. The structure mentioned some pointers, some ideas we got. We just checked the file type, we checked strings, like what are present within it. You can run strings against any sample, and from there also you can get a lot of idea. Okay, they are one of the very important things to identify some indicators, whether it is malicious or not, which we call as indicators of compromise. So I'll use PPDF against this sample. So there are different tools that you can use. Again, you don't have to be very much specific the tool that I am using. I find sometimes this tool interesting. There's another tool that I use. I'll mention here again. I sometimes use that tool also. Sometimes I use this tool also. Whichever tool works for me. If tool ABC is not working properly for me, I'll use some other tool. So here you can see that it also gives me some details. So mostly it gives me the details about like the hash of the file MD5. It gives me the size, which is okay, fine. It tells me that encrypted, it is not at all encrypted. It has two streams. One of the stream was something that we observed, and there was another stream which was of a bigger length. So there is something which is already present. Okay, there are no URIs, errors, version. As I mentioned that mostly they revolve around objects. Now it says that there is something encoded. Interesting. objects with JS code. We did not find any URI, we did not find any JS code, but we see that it tells us that there is some JS code. It tells us about open action. So if you're aware about these very small things, open action means that whenever you open this PDF file, an execution should happen if open action is mentioned. So mostly they are specific to JavaScript, but we did not observe any JavaScript. Sometimes it is specific to some other files also, some other file types also. So it does not always mean that I'm talking about JavaScript. Since it is mentioned here, so I mentioned about it. So if there is an embedded file over here, and if open action is mentioned, then this possibly means that as soon as the victim opens the PDF file, that embedded thing also should get executed. But we did not see any piece of code over there. We did not see any embedded file over there. So it is somewhere hidden. It mentions about embedded files, which is 1. Here it mentions about 8. 8 means it is talking about the object. Okay. So 9, 1, 8, it means that it is talking about the object number 8. Let's not get into that thing. I'm just making it clear that that is not the count. So at which object number, like it says that it has 9 objects. So which specific object number there is this encoded part. Okay, that is the thing. So the other tool that I have used, sorry, yes, which is this. Why am I using this? Let me just, talk about it. So PDF parser is another tool which actually helps you with the analysis of PDF files. -O means object. So here we saw that there are 9 objects. We are looking at object 8. So here is object 8, which is the second stream. We did see the second stream, which had, so much like data. The length was quite huge. -F could mean that it is filtering certain things out for us, filtering the streams out. Okay. -D means the output file. You have already seen there was an output file. So I'll change the name to output 2 over here. So what it means over here, that in this file, in this PDF file, under object number 8, please filter out and dump the object number 8 into out file 2. Okay, so this is what I'm asking the tool to do for me. And once I do that, it is taking some time. So meanwhile, I'll take questions till the time it is running. Okay, so Tanveer is saying that on CS certification, if you want to understand the good areas of cybersecurity, I have already mentioned that go through different articles related to different domains. If there are any kind of practical things that you need to do, explore those things, replicate them on your own, see if that is something which is exciting you, then go for that domain. Okay, I cannot tell you that you should go for this domain or that domain. That is something your own calling. Okay. No, I have not worked on Splunk. Okay. So it already ran and we can see that it has mentioned the same thing that we saw. Now, just for your understanding, Flate decode, if Flate decode is present, open action is present, we actually identify it as something is suspicious over here. So there is a very thin line between finding it suspicious and finding it malicious. If I'm finding it suspicious, it means that I have to check more to identify whether it is malicious or not. Okay, but if I am finding it malicious there only, then I might not require to do a lot of research because I've already found that it is malicious. Now the next step would be if it is to find out if it belongs to any campaign or any APT group or any other kind of threat actors. That would be the next step over here. So here it has actually found that it has actually filtered out and dumped that file in out file 2. So I'll see what is that out file 2, which is a RTF file. RTF file is another file type. If like, how do I open it? Let me see if I have opened it over here. So it is another kind of document file. You'll like look at it like as a normal text document only. So now what may have happened, that since I opened the PDF file and open action was already mentioned for this specific file, so this RTF file must have executed into my VM. Okay, and you see that a lot of things are mentioned over here, which looks slightly, actually not even slightly, it is a lot more obfuscated. I'm not going to deobfuscate right now. This is beyond the scope of our session. But I can deobfuscate later on, or you can go through my channel. I have deobfuscated some samples over here also. So if you can see that this is a very huge file, going through them will actually make you, see that there are so many things. There are other tools also, for example, for RTF also, RTF object, which you can use. And you can see some information it may give you related to that. So what is it saying from here? That it talks about that this is the MD5 file, and it is also saying that this is possibly an exploit for equation editor vulnerability. Okay, and this is 2017, so it is a pretty much older file. So here the malware is actually using an RTF, has an embedded RTF file which is actually exploiting a vulnerability. So malware use different kind of vulnerabilities also to perform the exploitation. And you can actually identify. Now the thing is that here I have taken help of the tool. If you want, you can actually analyze it all by yourself to see if yes, it is actually exploiting the vulnerability or not. Tools are there to make your task easy. You do not have to rely completely on them. But yes, they give you an idea so that you know that what you have to look for now. So that is one thing that you can do. So this is a very small demo of a very, like, analyzing a small PDF file, malicious PDF file. Okay, so please ask questions. My demo is done. I have not kept a very long technical demo over here. Small demo was what I had chosen for the session. Please let me know what all questions you have. We don't have any questions? Any video resources to start with? There are plenty of resources. You have my channel also, but yeah, since that is very subjective, as someone rightfully mentioned, you can find there are different malware analysis videos also, like OA Labs is one that I have followed a lot. I will actually share the links there. The Cyber Yeti is another, I think. So you can actually go through their videos and they are pretty good. They're really good. Yes, session is kind of completed. I wanted to show the demo in the end. Okay, I'll share the hash of the sample later on. I'll share all the links and links of the resources and some of the videos as well with Rohan, so that he can share with you all. Meanwhile, if you have any more questions, please let me know. I saw someone had raised their hand, so you can directly ask if you want. PDF file can be used by malware or threat actors to perform the attack. So a PDF file may not be the final, like you may not see a PDF file as someone which is something which is actually performing some kind of encryption into your device. But it may provide a base for the ransomware or other malicious major payloads to get executed into the device. So it acts as a delivery path for the final payload. Not just specific to PDF, other document, Excel files, they all work in a similar way. It's just that the file type is very different. And why do they choose these file types? Because normal users use these files. So they rely on these files. They don't find them malicious, to be honest. So Rohan is going to share all the samples. Not samples, sorry, all the links I'll share with Rohan.
Sure. Everyone, can you hear me? Shruti, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful session, Shruti Rupa. As everyone has requested that they are looking for some of the resources. For everyone, we have recorded this session and we will be sharing this on YouTube. So all of the resources that Shruti Rupa ji will be sharing with us, we will mention it in the group description or in the video description, so everyone has it for their reference. So she'll share it with my team and we'll put it in the group description. Along with the recording, you will have all of the resources in the description for your reference. And I thank all of the participants for engaging and interacting with the speaker. It made the session fruitful for everyone. So now, if in case anyone has any questions or queries, the platform is open. You may put in your queries. We have already shared the link to the form. Please submit it if you haven't, so you can receive the certificate for the event. If you have any questions, you may ask. You may unmute yourself and speak, or you may put it in the chat box. I see a couple of participants have raised their hand. So once I complete, you can go ahead. So thank you so much, Shruti Rupa. If anyone has any questions, please address them in the chat box, and then we can call it a day.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me.
We are glad. And as I can see that a lot of participants had a lot of technical queries, maybe we can have one more session wherein it will be more inclined towards the technical part. My research team will again connect with the participants and few more participants across various platforms, ask for a few more queries, and this time we can have a more technical session. Right? Let's see what the participants want to hear for the next one.
Sure.
Everyone, if you have any questions, queries, we have experts with us here, they can help you.
Very informative and nice.
Hello, Shruti. Thank you
Yes.
for it is a wonderful section. Really we learn a lot. And upcoming days we have to make more classes like this and giving some example about how the working tools and give example like this one.
So you need examples of tools.
Yeah. Open source tools you gave right now.
So whatever tools that I use, they are all open source. Okay. So if the tool that I recently used for this PDF, they are also open source. You can directly download, or if you are setting up Remnux Linux, which is specific to malware analysis, that Linux already has those malware analysis tools. For example, PPDF is open source, PDF parser specific to OLE tools. They are open source. For PE analysis, for Windows executable analysis, PE Studio, PE Bear, CFF Explorer, they are all open source. So, okay, I'll mention the list of the tools also, but they are all open source tools. Whichever tool that I follow, Wireshark, they're all open source. So, IDA Pro is one which is paid, but IDA Free is good enough for you to use.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any other question? Yes, please ask if you have any question. So when companies mention OS internals, they are looking for someone who can understand what processes someone has to look for if they are into malware analysis or they are into SOC analyst. So what kind of events, what kind of processes that they have to look for. Again, OS internals is very much linked with whether you are able to do debugging, reverse engineering also. If you understand OS internals, these are going to help you a lot. So these are all interlinked, and understanding the basics of OS is anyway going to help you identifying how a specific process is executing, is performing its action basically. So that is one of the, that is something that the organization actually looks for. Anything else? Hope I have answered your question. Please ask if you have any question. You can unmute yourself and ask directly. Sure. Thank you so much. Um, so, so I'll be sharing the link to those books with Rohan as well. But one book that I remember is Practical Malware Analysis. It's a very pretty old book. In fact, you can find the explanation of this book on YouTube as well. You can look for this book on YouTube. So there is a professor who explains different chapters of the book. So you can go through that also. So this book is going to give you a base on malware analysis and what all things you need to require. So with respect to assembly also, it is going to help you out. Okay. So it will give you some idea how registers, how stack and everything work, how this assembly works, how different operators are working, why we have different operators, what is the meaning of using different kinds of operators. So that book gives you a proper idea. Any more question? Yes, please ask. You can directly.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I joined late, so I think I missed a lot. Is there any way I can get a video of recorded video of the presentation earlier? I just joined about 2 minutes ago.
I think the video is available, so the team will share the video. It's going to be uploaded on YouTube.
Okay. How do I get the link?
Rohan will be able to help you with it.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, so the team will share all the details. Yeah. Any more question? Okay, if we don't have any more question, then we can conclude the session, I guess.
Thanks a lot for the session, ma'am.
Thank you so much.